And
you name it, be a better way of going with that.
You're listening to us on 107.7 FM New Orleans and the United Public Radio Network. And we are live every Friday night from 9 to 11 p.m. Central Standard Time. And I am super, super excited about our guest tonight, my good friend, John Alite, and well known as John Gotti's hitman and enforcer. I better be nice to this guy, you know? Anyway.
That's where you live, bud.
Well, you know, John's story is, I want to give a little introduction to John before we, bring on questions. But John is really incredible. And you'll really hear about things tonight that you'll never know about the Cosa Nostra and its operations, not the Hollywood stuff, but the real stuff. And John was involved in the Gambino crime family, and again is best well known for his activity with John Gotti as a hitman and enforcer. But the bottom line is, it's not just a sensational story. It has a moral and a meaning, and that's why I admire John so much. He's not one of these, Hollywood mob celebrities that just goes out and does and brags and doesn't do anything. He really contributes to society and helps others. But this is about a real person whose life was deeply into high-level associates in the Cosa Nostra, but he became a changed man, and now he has a life of helping others. And he'll be talking about that later in the show, the Second Chance program, which he's doing, and it's just incredible. All I can say is, no matter, I guess, what you've been involved in, I guess, John, there's hope, and John tells the story about hope and this turnaround and now how he's helping others. But like I said, the thing I like about John, and I call him my friend, is that he has credibility. He has names, places, locations, and he just, to me, is the real deal. I want to also mention some links and books and information about him. It's all up on my Facebook page and social media. I just put it up. We'll also mention it again during the show and at the end. But there's one of the best books is called Gotti Rules, which is about John, right, John? The book's all about, which is a great book. John also has a legal sports betting site, right? I put legal in.
Yeah, that's right.
Sports betting site where you can get premier sports pick. It's really cool. It's alitesports.com, ALITE sports.com. Again, all this is posted on all my social media. He has a channel in Australia called, this is really wonderful, crimeflick.com, CRIMEFLICK.com. And you can watch all your favorite crime shows, podcasts, and more. He has a show with another high-ranking Mafia notable called Gene Borello, right, John?
Yeah, the Johnny and Gene show, yep.
Yeah, and tonight also, towards the end, we want to keep him in suspense, John. We're going to have a psychic twist, right? Which you blew my mind when we were talking the other night, and you sent me those articles. So it'll really fit in. And I guess I want to say I'm honored to call John my friend. I admire him very much, and I'm very appreciative that he came on the show. He's the real deal. And John, welcome to the show, and thanks for coming on. And I know after all my long introduction, Joe wants to get his 2 cents in also. So thank you, John.
Thanks, Johnny.
Well, welcome, John. It's great to have you on. I know I've heard a lot about you, and John's been talking a lot about you as well. I know the listening audience is looking. I see they're loading up the servers as we're speaking, which is really nice to see. Got to have asked a question. I don't know. We'll see you in a second. Now we might take questions. I don't know. John and I probably have quite a few questions. You might get in. You might not get in. We'll see how that goes tonight. But welcome to the show. I know. First off, what made you decide to go public? I'm just curious. Or come into the public eye, I guess is what I'm saying.
I think because there was so many different stories out there that weren't true. And the reality, while I was in a Brazil penitentiary, different outlets, media were telling different tales of the history that went on with my life and Gambino family, the Gotti family. And when I came back to the States, I wanted to set the record straight, which was from the truth, from some of the stories that were out there. And I wanted the reality and not the false stories that were, continuing to be out there in the media.
Yeah, because I know there's a lot. I'm sorry, John. I know there was a lot of movie hype, and I know Hollywood has a tendency to screw everything up. But we'll just say ad. We'll be polite tonight, but really they like to screw things up. I mean, it's ridiculous. I've seen stories. I've witnessed things and seen stories, and I've caught a clip of a movie or a TV or just an article sometimes or a report, and it's never what actually happened. And you know, sometimes the reality is more interesting than what the Hollywood is portraying. So I'm grateful you're coming out for it. But go ahead, John. I didn't mean to cut you off, Dave.
Oh,
Oh,
yeah. No, I just wanted John to maybe start from the beginning to give kind of a background. How did you get involved in the Gambino family, and what was your motivation to become involved in the crime syndicate? If you could give us a little background on that.
Well, my father grew up living on Delancey and Rivington Street, Manhattan, and he grew up around all gangsters, where Vito Genovese grew up, and most of the guys. He wasn't a gangster. He was a gambler. He was a street guy, but he wasn't involved with the mob as far as doing work or anything violent where I got myself into. So he brought me around people that were very famous. The Luciano family, which becomes one of his partners, Charlie Luciano, who was a made guy with the Gambino family. So I was around them since I'm 5 years old. And then a couple of years later, I'm around the Ruggiano family. And Anthony Ruggiano, his brother Albert, and their father was known as Fat Andy Ruggiano, who was one of the guys that got made around Albert Anastasia Murder Incorporated. And he was kind of a big figure to me growing up around that family. Very famous gangster, and guys like Gotti, the father, and different mob figures all were around. Actually, Fat Andy Ruggiano, who was a serious, no nonsense gangster, killer, earner. He had it all as far as a gangster. He was packaged, and his sons, Albert and Anthony, were not typical sons from a mob boss's family. He didn't believe in nepotism. And he raised his sons as gentlemen and as tough guys, legitimate street credible gangsters. Not like you see a lot of these guys out there that come from mob families and they're spoiled, they're spoon fed, they use their father's names, they're constantly telling stories of their father, but yet themselves never threw a firecracker at a picnic. So, you know, guys like me didn't respect them. Guys like Anthony Ruggiano or Albert, or guys, the sons that I grew up around, or Frankie Burke, Jimmy Burke from Goodfellas' son. These guys were legitimate street guys, in and out of jails, running crap games, sports games. Actually, Anthony Ruggiano was involved, the son, in a murder that I was also involved in a conspiracy to. It was part of my case of his brother-in-law. So these guys earned their keep. You know, they weren't, like I said, so I had a lot of respect for them. Coming from the street, I was raised around their family, and I just take a real respect level for the father, and then obviously the sons. And I really don't have that in the mob world. I think a lot of these guys are just spoiled little bratty kids.
I have to agree with you wholeheartedly.
You were both a street guy and a earner too, which is kind of interesting, right, John? Where a lot of, and also to clarify, there's no mafia in the United States. That's in Italy, right? It's the Cosa Nostra. And the other interesting thing I wanted to comment on it, you're Albanian, right? So you could not be a made man because you have to have one of your parents Italian, correct?
Correct.
But you were really high up. Did that bother you at all that you couldn't get like an official title or anything, or it didn't really matter? Because you worked with the top people anyway.
You know, you got, again, you're going to get guys that are going to talk, and I guess out of jealousy, or I guess out of, they didn't get my respect. So they'll tell you that, well, he's not a made guy. He didn't, you know, he couldn't have conversation and sit. But anybody that knows me knows guys like Jimmy Burke or myself or Joe Watts or, Bugsy Siegel. You know, any of these guys, I could name a ton of us. We had to respect as if we sat with made guys, captains, bosses. So that nonsense is guys that I guess trying to put a spin on exactly reality of the street life and, you know, what I did and what guys like me did. Irish gangs, the Westies, and guys like that.
You brought in a tremendous amount of money too. What was your heyday that you brought in?
I mean, I owned a lot of companies. So when I lost my parking company and my nightclubs, it was 30 something million, I guess I lost. And
Wow.
I had a piece of property that was valued now at about 10 million. I earned a lot of money over the years. I traveled over the years to 30 something countries, and I learned to adapt to ways of living in the mob world and in the legitimate world. And I think you need a mixture of both to be successful in the mob with serious guys like Fat Andy Ruggiano and that kind of company. If you're not under their their direction and the way of living, you're not going to stick around them too long.
I want to give a little background of the Gambino family too, because I know a lot of people listening may not have the background, so they may understand a little bit. But
slow
Gambino,
down, John, slow down. I want to go backwards for a minute. Slow down for a second. He gets excited, man. I got to slow him down a little bit. I was thinking about what you said a few minutes ago about the respect and all. I grew up around the Marcellos. And we used to go, when I was 5 years old, they had a couple of casinos down here that they kept. One of them was in a old boat launch place. When you walked in, it's just an old boat place when you were going to boat go fishing in the swamp. Of course, behind Joe Marcello's desk, there was a casino back there, a slide door, you go back there. Also, anyway, I don't want to give them all away because I might get my ass in trouble. But the thing about it is I remember the old man coming in, Marcello himself, and everybody was like, yeah, but I remember his brothers and even some of the sons, and it just wasn't the same thing. They just even in the area, because a good friend of mine Kenny Bayer used to do collections for. He's passed now, so we can mention his name. He used to do collections for him. And of course, he could never go any higher than where he was. But he used to get furious because these little guys, he considered them little punks. He was always arguing with them. Actually, I think he would have took one or two out if he didn't think somebody would have killed him along the way. And it was just an interesting, growing up watching all of this. And I guess nobody ever thought anything about it because my dad grew up with Carlos Marcello. They'd known each other. My dad was born in 1911, so he grew up with the old man. And they all knew each other really well. And it was just weird going to dinners and places and seeing things. Of course, they never let me around anything with some kind of thing that, stay your ass away. Matter of fact, when I started playing darts way back in my 20s, I used to play in a place called the Ski Lodge. Tony the Tiger owned it. He's the local pusher, dealer, connector, whatever you want to call him. And they would let me come in, have breakfast. Vince and Marcello would be in there. I could come hang out. For some reason, my dad must have done something, but they would never let me any closer than that. I could, they knew who I was and they were, hi, how you doing? But that was it. That was the end of that. I don't know what went on there, but it was true because when you watch their kids, it was like there was a separation, and I think in some cases it was a deliberate separation by the old guys, but some of it was just like they just didn't have that. How can I say this? That savoir faire that the other ones had. That I mean, they had the fear factor because some of them just killed people, but they didn't have that respect. Nobody really gave them that. And I remember when Carlos got out of jail, he had his brother arrested because he was against dealing drugs in Fat City and all. He was anti-drugs. The day we're all sitting in the club, the day he gets out, man, like half of the JPs and state troopers show up. They bust open his trunk. There's 60 kilos of coke in the guy's trunk. You know where he was going. But that's after they let Carlos come back off the island. They had him on for a while. That was a weird family, but it was an interesting childhood. But I was nowhere anything like what you were doing, and it's fascinating listening to you because every now and then I hear something that just sends me back to my childhood. I was like, damn. And it's kind of just a weird way to grow up, I guess, in a way. But anyway, I didn't mean to cut you off. It just got me to thinking when you said that.
John, I just wanted to kind of continue with the stories to bring you up to with your involvement with Gotti, and your high-ranking position. But as you mentioned, you grew up basically as a baby in the Gambino family, right? And Carlo, make sure I have this right so people can get a historical sense. Carlo Gambino was basically the first boss, right, of the Gambino family. And then he died, and then Paul Castellano took over. Now, did you know Paul? Because Paul was hit by Gotti, right? John Gotti decided to take out Paul Castellano, right?
Well, Gotti, the Frankie DeChico, that people really don't talk about as much because he gets blown up later on. And Frankie Locascio, Sammy Gravano, Joe Watts, there was a team of them that put the coup together and they hit Paul in front of Spark Steakhouse. See,
Yeah.
but you don't hear too many people talking about it. I talk about Paul a little different than I think the rest of the people in the mob or the history of the mob. I think it was one of the worst mistakes in mob history, hitting Paul Castellano.
Because he was a good earner, wasn't he? Wasn't he considered the Howard Hughes of the?
Yeah, he was the Howard Hughes of the mob. He was a billionaire. He brought power because of the money into the mob. And, you know, you got guys that talk about it that are outside the mob world, so they don't understand it. And then you have guys like Sammy Gravano, who that, you know, I'm still friendly with, we talk, and he still agrees with what they did and the move they made. Obviously, everybody's going to have their opinion. But like any major corporation, a CEO of a company that's bringing in that kind of money makes you very powerful. And his relationships with the other mob families were strong because of the money he brought in. So his alliances were strong. And at the time, they had the excuse of Gotti and his crew got caught selling drugs, and they thought Paul was going to hit them. It was never going to happen, in my opinion. Paul wasn't hitting anybody. Gotti and them wanted to hit him. They were trying to get the okay through Neil Della Croce, who was actually the strong arm behind Paul Castellano as far as running the crews where they was respected because he was respected as a hardcore gangster. But Neil was dying at the time of cancer, and they kept trying to get approval from him. Neil wouldn't have it. When Neil dies, they hit Paul. But the thing is, people don't understand this. Paul had 2 criminal cases at the time. He had a
That's what I heard.
case.
Yeah.
He had 2 cases. So those 2 cases, he wasn't making a move on anybody at that time. He had his hands full with his own cases. So that excuse, I think, was, you know, a smart move on Gotti's part to initiate, let's hit him. He's going to hit us first. But I don't think in reality that was even true at all. I think Paul never hit anybody at that time.
Was there any retaliation from the family, Lucchese, the Genovese, or did they just ignore it and just say, "Well, that's fine"?
No, it was immediate retaliation.
Really?
They tried to plant the bomb to hit John Gotti and Frankie DeChico, and they hit Frankie. John never gets in the car; somebody else does, and they set the bomb off, and it kills Frankie and it injures a couple of people. But they missed the hit, and after that, they continue hitting guys in correlation with that hit. So they hit Eddie Lino with the 2 detectives on the side of Bell Parkway. They hit Bobby Borriello in front of his house in Brooklyn.
Really?
And,
Wow.
So the hits carried on from the hit of Paul Castellano, and you had guys like Gas Pipe, one of the bosses of the Lucchese family, who put a hit actually on John Gotti Jr. in 1992, and Gas Pipe gets locked up. Well, Gotti Jr. would have got hit also for retaliation to get even with the father for what he did. So there was a lot of hits going on at that time. One of the other guys that get hit, unrelated, is related but unrelated. He was put in position as one of the bosses of the Colombo family by Gotti, Joey Scopo. Joey Scopo gets hit by a faction of the Colombo family. Also part of the retaliation of what the Gambino and Gotti was doing. So there was a lot of hits, and they were unanswered. In other words, our crew never hit anybody back, which showed a big weakness on Gambino family side.
So now John is boss, right? I should mention also to the audience, because we're going to be mentioning names later, and you're going to be talking about events that you have. Like, you're my friend, so I don't want to get you in trouble. You have immunity, so you cannot be prosecuted or anything for anything you talk about, or even crimes you've committed that they didn't know about, right, John? So
right. We blanketed a deal when I came in and took my plea with the feds and did my time in Brazil and United States. And part of that deal was I have immunity on every crime that I've already spoke about and anything I've done in the past.
Interesting. I just wanted people to know that, because I think as we get on into the show, they're going to say, well, how come you can talk about this stuff and the feds aren't going to come after you? So, and I want you to talk a little bit about this later to show people that you really have the names, places, locations. This is factual stuff. You're not play acting. You're not making this up. And I've done my research. I know a lot about this. You're the real deal. But so maybe you could take us from there. Now Gotti's crime boss. What's your involvement now with the Gotti family and John Jr.?
Well, as the years move on, people don't understand. And I'm going to use some names here so people understand. One of the
Sure.
Columbus bosses, Sonny Francis, comes home, and his son just recently did an interview. Michael is actually not his legitimate son; it's his adopted son. But
Sure.
the real father is Chubby, and I knew him also. But Michael did an interview that you don't sit, guys that aren't made, don't sit and don't discuss family business. Completely a falsehood. I actually sat with Sonny Francis when he came home from one of his bids on parole with Angelo Ruggiero, who was known to be the cousin of Gotti, very powerful guy at the time. Got
Yeah.
caught in a heroin case with Jeannie Gotti and Johnny Cornelia. But I sat with him out in Long Island when he came home with Johnny Ruggiero, actually Angelo's son, over an incident with John Francis, who was actually a tough guy. You hear different things about him later on. He cooperated. Him and his partner were street guys, tough guys, and they made a mistake one day, and they kidnapped and tied up Angelo Ruggiero's son, Johnny Ruggiero, out in the Hamptons. And I got a phone call that had him tied up and they might kill him. And I drove out to the Hamptons with one of Gotti's guys, this guy, Steve Kaplan. And I went into the house, and they had no idea who Johnny was. They didn't know who Johnny Ruggiero was at the time. They got involved in a drug deal, went bad, and they were going to kill him. They had him rolled up. He was drunk and high, and Johnny was a nice guy, but later on he gets straightened out, Ruggiero, but didn't belong in the life. He wasn't like his father. And actually, he's got a couple of younger brothers that are tough, but Johnny wasn't. He was just a nice guy, party guy, and he didn't belong in the life. He was just a happy-go-lucky guy. So I saved his life. I come into the house. We had guns on each other, and we shook hands by the time I left. He told me, I never met him before. He says, I'm Sonny's son. And he was a legitimate tough guy, Johnny Francis. And we kept it quiet. Johnny said, please don't tell Gotti's. I didn't. And we sat, maybe, I guess it was a year or two after that, around that, Sonny comes home and Johnny needs to see him over the money he owes his son. And we arrange a meeting through the Ruggianos, who the Ruggianos are very friendly with Sonny Francis and his wife. And Anthony and his father and the mother, Jenny, was very close with Michael Francis's family. These are the things that I don't like about some of guys like Michael, for instance. He's a very articulate, well-spoken con man. And, and I don't respect these guys, the way they talk, because they want to level themselves like they're above the playing field, when actually, if you're sitting on a chair, they're below the chair. They're not above the chair. They're not going to come to these meetings where guys like me show up, because they know they're not home. But the respect level comes from Sonny. And we respect guys from the top down. So the sons of these nepotism gangsters have become made guys. We're not respecting them.
Yeah,
So
I think I told you one of my uncle's married to a Francis, so I'm probably a distant cousin of or by marriage to Michael, but I've never met him. I know Sonny was actually paroled by pardoned by Obama, right? If I remember, he had like 50
Correct.
years when he was 100 years old.
Actually, he doesn't want nothing to do with Michael. When he tells me, this is, I guess, late 80s, early 90s when he came home, and he says to me, you know what the problem with my son Michael is? He talks too much and he's good at it. And I never forgot what he said. And Michael has no idea I met with him, but I'm good with names. Steve Kaplan's still around. Johnny Francis is still around. His partner's still around. And I guess if he talks to his brother or if he talks to his brother's partner, he can verify this occurred. So, I'm very good at remembering things. We met in Mineola. Sonny brought 2 young kids with him. And he asked me at the time, he knew who I was from the Ruggianos. And he asked, how's these kids I brought with me? And I smiled. I said, they're nice kids, but they're not street guys. and he told them both, "Get out of here, go home." And he chased them right away. And Sonny was a gentleman. He talked very quietly. He wasn't articulate the way Michael is. And so I'm pretty well schooled with the Franchise family, although Michael's not aware of it. And it's actually one of his cousins also worked with my brother in the stock market for years. So I know the family well. I just don't like when guys like Michael try to dress down, whether it's Anthony Ruggiano without saying the name, or Gene Varello, who earned his way as a tough
I like
guy.
Gene. I like Gene.
Yeah. He's another guy. He was no nepotism. He wasn't handed anything. He went out and he did work, and he was an earner. Not obviously the level Michael earned, and he talks about this gas fraud thing for 40 years now. That's the only story he can really tell, because he wasn't really about anything else. And to be honest with you, from what I understand, and some things that were told to me from other people, and I won't mention their names, that was Sonny's thing that Michael kind of took over. So he's been looking off of something, and I'm waiting for a new story besides, this nonsense. And I think it's time for me to put him, one of the guys, a little bit in his place of the way he speaks and the way he articulates some things about the mob world. And I'll invite him on my show the way he did Ori Spado. And me and Anthony Ruggiano and Gene will sit with him like gentlemen, and he can contest anything I say on our show.
Oh, you had Ori Spado on your show? I like Ori.
No, I talked to Ori. And
really? I like him.
About Ori, I don't know him personally. He made a comment, and Michael fired back at Ori, and he said, an FBI agent spoke to me. Well, what are you doing speaking to an FBI agent? Now, I could school all these guys in this life. So if you're not a cooperator, which you were, what are you doing talking to an FBI agent? Why is he confiding you about Ori? And why are you having these conversations with any kind of agents? Why were you sitting down with agents? And I could go on and on and on about the nonsense that he spooks, because I've been raised in this life since I'm 5 years old. I've sat with bosses, I sat with captains, I exchanged money around the table between different families. Guys that know me, whether it's Sammy Gravano or Anthony Ruggiano, or name any other name in the mob, will tell you what I'm saying is more than accurate.
Well, you were in prison for what, about 18 years? Have you been in every prison in Brazil in the United States?
I was in 3 prisons in Brazil.
Wow.
I have about 9 guys, a little more than that stay in touch with me from those prisons, from around the world, from Brazil, from Turkey, from Denmark, from the UK, from Spain, so Portugal, that shared what went on in those Brazilian penitentiaries with it. Actually, we're working on some things now. So there's a lot of people that offer me different, you guys were talking about movies and shows, and, I'm a busy guy when it comes to this stuff. I turn down a lot of things when it comes to these movie offers until I feel I find the right match. So
you gotta be one tough sucker in Brazil and Turkey, man.
Yeah.
I had some friends through some time in Turkey. I was like, "Ooh, man."
You remember Midnight Express? The movie years ago.
Yeah. I'm just, I've heard. I've never been there, so I can't say for myself. But I've heard some serious horror stories, and I ain't heard Brazil was much better, to be honest with you. So I got to say,
what the problem is, Joe and John. You got when Michael did an interview with Vlad. He's talking about likes on YouTube. It's almost girlish when they speak like this about views and not. Who's talking? Grown men talking about likes, like you're playing on Facebook as a child. So, do I have respect for them? I did until he started talking this way. I didn't front them out and say, you're an articulate con man. You're good at making money. Ori said it right. You're living a lie. No one's going to use your name. They're going to use your father's. And your brother, let's keep it right, was the tough guy. You're far from a tough guy. Like I said, he never threw a firecracker at a picnic. So, I want to call it what it is. So these guys that are trying to influence these kids into believing their nonsense, any of them are welcome to sit with me and, and discuss what I'm saying, if I'm lying or if it's not the way I'm saying it, and they can get their point across. Like gentlemen, not like
Jimmy Hoffa. What do you know about him?
Jimmy, listen.
These are stories,
right? Because these are nonsense stories. or Marilyn Monroe and Sonny Datum. I mean, these are just nonsense. They're good fairy tales for people to watch and listen to, but in reality, they're nonsense.
Nobody knows what happened to Hoffa, right? He was shot, and nobody knows who he buried, right?
You know, whoever did it, whether it was his stepson involved, in my opinion, if I had to guess, being involved in his life forever, whoever brought him there was supposed to be his stepson set him up, or actually did the work, one or the other. I believe it was the stepson somewhere involved. I don't think it was as technical as everybody believes. The mob doesn't like that. We do things the easy way. The easy way is get somebody on your lap, and nobody better than his stepson to take them there. So
interesting. I met Jimmy Hoffa's lawyer in an elevator once in a meeting when Hoffa was alive, but I never met Hoffa. Have you?
Well, somebody said, I got to tell you, Jimmy Hoffa was a tough guy. I mean, they can't take that from his son's an aggressive guy. I got, guys like that I respect. Listen, people say, well, he got killed, but the guy was legitimately a tough guy. I mean, he didn't have too many brains, especially in those days, to challenge what he was challenging. And, that's his ego and that's his loyalty to his guys. I respect him, but you're not going to last, not in those days anyway.
Tell us about Sammy the Bull, because that's everybody knows about Sammy, because he flipped on. The thing that I really find really unjust is he admitted to killing 19 people, right, Sammy? And he gets off scot-free. And I'm not making a judgment call. And other people who didn't even kill anybody, whatever, got prison time. What's your feeling about that?
Somebody turned my words around somewhere about this too when I said Sammy didn't kill 19 guys. What I was trying to say is, in the mob world, again, and I'll give you an example, because we'll talk about Anthony Ruggiano and the murder of his brother-in-law for putting his hands on his mother. Anthony took care of that business himself with Tommy Marone, another friend of mine, and another guy, Skinny Dom, and I was involved in that murder, in the conspiracy. Okay, I wasn't at the location when they killed the guy. Even Anthony actually didn't know I was involved in this murder, and I copped to this conspiracy to commit murder because I was involved in the planning, the setting up, getting guys involved, talks and conversations on killing Frankie Geeky. Now, in our world, we don't talk about it again. It's done. The murder was done. Mm-hmm. And even to this day, me and Anthony haven't talked about it. And I'm bringing it up now because we're out of the life. And we already did our time for these murders. But what people don't understand is Sammy was involved in things like that. He wasn't the actual person at all these murders, shooting a gun like a serial killer that people call him. He was involved in the development of a murder, just like John Gotti was in the development of murder. John Gotti never pulled the trigger himself and killed anybody, as I believe.
Yeah, I heard that. Yeah.
He's never used a gun in his life. I'll eat my hat if he ever did, or my shoes. So what I did for a living, whether it was a good thing or a bad thing, I did it on a regular basis. And there's guys like me that did it on a regular basis. Sammy did do a lot of work, but not what everybody believes. He's not a serial killer. He's an intelligent guy. And then the structure and the understanding of the mob, because I don't think in reality, and I think any of us will agree with this, John, if me and Joe are talking about you and crimes you did in the past and throw you under the bus on crimes that we're not supposed to speak about again, and you find bracelets on your hand and you're in a prison because of our big mouths and because we were blaming you on all the tapes, what would you do now?
Yeah.
Now, take from Sammy's perspective.
Sure.
Now, take a step. Now, people say, well, you signed up for this. And no, that's not true. We didn't sign up for guys to talk about crimes committed in the past. So in reality, Sammy's right. Once John got caught on those tapes, he was supposed to be killed. That's our laws. That's our rules. So when no one's doing anything to help Sammy while he's behind bars, he's saying to himself, okay, this guy got me locked up. I was loyal to him. And now you can get the Gotti's perspective. You got to ask, the father's not around. You got to ask the son. What's his opinion of that? Or, I mean, there's nobody else but the son to ask his opinion. When these guys don't want to speak about the reality, they can't get indicted for this stuff. It doesn't involve them. So why aren't they speaking? Well, when Michael Francis talks about statues, you cooperated. Stop the nonsense. they're insulting the public that don't understand our life. One, you cooperated. Two, you blame your father saying he was trying to kill you. Three, you haven't stopped exploiting Sonny Francise's name to get yourself money and make yourself popular and make somebody respect you. So I can run through this. Now, either you love your father or you dislike your father. Either you're a religious man or you're not a religious man. Play the field that you want to play, but stop coming up the plate switching sides.
Now you still keep in touch with Sammy's daughter, right, Karen?
I keep in touch with Sammy and his daughter.
You do? Okay,
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
good.
yeah.
Vinny the Chin, he always interests me because I remember seeing him walking around Greenwich Village in his pajamas. You remember? I guess he was trying to get out. Did you know Vinny at all? Vinny the Chin?
No,
Do you have any...
listen, their family was a little different. I did business with other captains in their family. We owned parts of clubs, one place called Northern Lights and another place called Avanti's. And again, and I won't throw names out, but
Sure.
He was Genevieve's captain. He didn't want to meet Gotti Jr. He didn't want to meet, at that time, Bobby Borriello was alive. He would only meet me and exchange money with me. So, when people are talking about, they don't really understand the life. And some of these guys that are spoiled, what I call almost brats, are trying to portray something that's not honest and sincere. And I keep trying to, you know me, John, and Joe, you know a lot of stories. I'm trying to help kids, and I'm trying to mold a picture for them to really understand the truth and reality of this life.
Yeah, I want to get into that later about your
about showing that these guys do know violence, and they use like me. And if Andy Ruggiano was around still, or Luciano Blackie, I don't think my life would have, or I wouldn't have been abused. Abused meaning used so much, to use so much violence in the street for our family, like I was used and later on tossed away for the work I was doing. I think Andy would have treated me the way he always treated me, like almost like a grandson. And the sons, we still maintain a very good friendship.
What I found out too, the respect you had, John, when you were in prison, if somebody thought you were a rat, they could have taken you out, but they didn't. They had respect for you. You didn't go on a witness protection program because you felt you were honest. And I admire you for that,
Well, John, I was betrayed. There's, the story just recently was in Gangland News. Joseph Carrazzo, an attorney, made some statements to Gangland News backing exactly what I said, that when I was in a penitentiary in Brazil, he gave information. Gotti was already meeting with the government, and he was a rat. Now, Joseph Carrazzo's uncle and father were known to be the consigliere and acting boss of the Gambino family. There's no reason an attorney would make those statements saying what I said was correct, and there was no reason, if you want to cooperate, would you leave the country? Why would you leave the country? Why would you leave your children to live in a penitentiary in Brazil when I get caught in conditions of being, like a prisoner of war? You would never do it. There's no reason to do it if you want to cooperate. But while I'm there, the reason why I came out with all this is, while I'm there, Gotti and a slew of his captains, Mikey Scarsby, Leonardo, who Gotti says is right, they're all cooperating. A slew of them. Not one, not two, not three. I'm an Albanian who's living by this life of rules. Even though I don't like half the guys, I refuse to testify against them. While I'm doing this, you have the Bonanno family, the whole regime. Joe Messina, the boss, the underboss Salvatale, Frankie Cope, the captain, and the 10 other captains all turned state's evidence working with the government. They all turned. They're all given information. So when I come home and I see not just them, dozens are giving me up, then I threw the towel and I said I had enough of this life and the double standard of these rules when guys like Michael Francis, and I'm going to mix them together, John Gotti Jr., are cooperating, meeting the government, telling people some other bullshit, and really insulting the intelligence of the people, because the mob world understands what they did.
Yeah, tell us about Queen of the Day. I remember Queen for the Day. Remember the show? Queen.
Yeah,
but
Queen,
tell
yeah, King of
it is.
Queens.
Yeah,
With,
yeah.
yeah, he's a funny guy.
What is Queen of the
Queen of
Day?
the Day is when a target, that means a target of an investigation from the FBI where they're going to indict you. They offer that subject to come in for the day with the FBI, sign all kinds of papers saying they're going to cooperate, they're going to give up information, they're going to talk. There's usually attorneys there, there's prosecutors there, and it's a long process. It's not done like today. You don't make a phone call. You make an arrangement, 3 attorneys, and especially if you're in prison, like Gotti was or Michael Francis was. There's a whole slew of cloak and dagger things that got to be done for their safety, so people don't kill them within the prisons or try to kill them later on. So they got to maneuver them around to go into a prosecutor's office and sit with a team of people, and they get immunity to give up every crime or anything that the government asks them about and anything they divulge. So while they're doing that, it can't be used against them. So this is what Gotti did. This is what Michael Francis did. This is what Willie Boy Johnson did. These guys never took the stand. Well, I think Michael did take the stand, but Gotti didn't, Willie Boy Johnson didn't, a slew of guys didn't. Whitey Bulger didn't. These guys were all doing the same thing. Bosses were giving information. Greg Scarpa, so what they're doing is working with the feds and giving you up at the same time. So that's why I said Sammy Gravano's case isn't so cut and dry like people think. Did he come in? Yes. But put yourself in his shoes, the guy that's loyal. Now, I understand our rules, but you better understand human nature too. If me and Joe put you in that kind of position after you've been nothing but loyal to me and Joe, what would you do? You don't have the luxury to come after me and Joe. You're already in handcuffs, and they say you're going to do 3 life sentences now. So it's not as simple. Loyalty only gets loyalty when you get loyalty. And in our life, we respect, believe it or not, if somebody shoots us in the head, but we don't expect to be bitten on the back while you're not in the room talking about crimes they're not supposed to be committing, or talking about crimes we already committed that we're not supposed to be committing. So this is
it makes sense. Another question, John, always bothered me. Supposedly, you weren't supposed to deal with drugs; you would get killed. Is that true? And I know you were involved in that at one time, and they would look the other way. Or what's the story on that?
John Gotti himself is the boss, right? Now, when he becomes the boss, his brother Vinny Gotti goes to jail for cocaine dealing. His son gets locked up, John Gotti Jr., in a superseding indictment with Vinny Zolo in a drug conspiracy. He made Vinny Zolo take the weight for it. His brother Jeannie Gotti goes to jail for heroin trade. Johnny Knig goes to jail for heroin. Eddie Leno gets locked up for heroin. Sally Ears, his brother-in-law, heroin. Arnold and Fonzie Spiteri, heroin. So either John Gotti Sr. is oblivious to the street world, or these guys are all kicking up drug money to him.
Yeah.
I dealt drugs. We all dealt drugs. It's part of the mob world. We're not supposed to deal drugs. We deny we deal drugs. And 3/4 of the guys are using drugs. This is the street. The street is, my respect level on the street is, I say the same thing all the time. I had a lot of black friends. I still do. When they're on the street, gangsters are gangsters. I don't look at their skin color and say, well, he's black, he's not a gangster. If that guy is dangerous and he makes money with me, he's my friend if I trust him. And Spanish, whether it's whatever color, I don't care what color you are. This nonsense about, the Westies did more work for the mob than anybody. They're Irish. So when you got these guys trying to tell this tale of, well, he's not a made guy. Listen, some guys aren't meant to be in the mob because they're not earners and they're not tough guys. And then there's other guys that are both, and then there's guys that are 1 and 1. And Michael did say this part, and it's true. But overall, in the mob world, everybody has a position. And the position is usually very few guys are violent. It's not what the world thinks. They're all capable. He made a stupid comment about everybody being capable. Actually, 98% aren't capable, not capable of anything. They're not capable of finding their car and driving home. They're too dumb. And then you got 1% is very intelligent, and the rest follow. And you got 1% are the strong arm and the killers. Now, through life, when you're doing work, either you're a worker or you're not. And whether I like it or not, I have done what I've done. And I'm very open about it because I'm trying to tell kids it's not about, oh, people say, well, you did this, you did that. I said that and I got famous for saying, yes, I did. I say, yes, I did. So kids understand, don't listen to these morons, spoon-fed nepotism kids that never did anything. Listen to me, the guy that did all this work. Or listen to Anthony Ruggiano, who after their life, or we're trying like Gene Borello, who's a tough guy.
Yeah,
and
like Gene.
are helping him not to go back to that world. But when you have instigators that are trying to teach these kids when they speak well and they're wearing a suit and tie and they keep bringing up their daddy's name, it's insulting because they're trying to con these kids into believing they're about some secret society that ain't a secret. Here's the only secret, and I've been telling the world this since I'm home. These guys don't do any work. They don't know what a gun is. They don't know what side of a gun is. They don't know what a knife is. They don't know what it is to gut a body like Anthony Ruggiano did with it, the guy that put his hand on his mother. That's a gangster. That's why I respect him. And he's a gentleman. And he doesn't talk out of school. So those are the guys. And when someone says not getting made, guys that Anthony never got officially made, but every bit of he was made. They were going to make him. He kept going to jail. Gene Borello, same thing. He was getting made. They're from a line of heritage of gangsters, their family. And Andy Ruggiano was a serious killer for Murder Incorporated with Albert Anastasia. So when guys are writing or typing and they're either haters, people are putting them up to it, or they don't really understand the mob. And I'm here to school guys so they don't follow this and this life. And I try to be true as I could to it and try to get that message across to kids. Stop believing these articulate bullshit because that's what they are.
There's a lot of them. There's a lot of them. I know growing up with them, there's a lot of them that were, how can I say this, pretty boys? I guess we'll just leave it at that.
Yeah. You know what they are. And the aspect of life, you got these guys, and they're good salesmen. I mean, Michael could sell snake oil. He's a born again Christian, and he's talking about. He just told a story about a guy hitting a guy over the head with a chair. Hit Ori Spader with a chair. You're supposed to be a born again Christian. I thought that you believe in helping kids. So why are you telling these gangster stories? Why aren't you preaching more about God? Why aren't you telling these kids follow this? But you veered off left because you're not making money right anymore as a minister.
Hey, tell us about your second chance. This will fit in nice here. Your second chance program, helping people.
Second chance program is there's a guy Paul Nuttall and his wife Tiffany and Michael Harris who's still in prison, and these guys contacted me and they started talking to me about things I always called second chance. I believe that especially what's going now with all the inner cities and all the riots and all this. I think everybody's missing the mark because when you give funds, and I'm not going to get political here, so I won't talk what side of the aisle, but when you give funds to people to live for free, it's like the mob. You're holding them under their thumb.
I agree.
And you're controlling them. So when these freebie, give them free this, give them free that, give them free money, what you're saying is their lives not worth more than a couple $100 a week. Be happy. And when we tell you stay in the house during quarantine, you got to stay home. This is America and freedom. Give opportunity. So all I keep talk about is give opportunity. Let them get jobs. Help them when they leave prison, like me or Gene or anybody else. You should be able to get a job again. You should be able, you paid your dues. You should be able to go apply for UPS or FedEx or any job you want, the airport, and by your merit, let them have a life again. So these young kids don't have to pick up a gun. And I talk about the ball players. They're all got big mouths, right? Or musicians, or artists. So why are you charging ticket prices out of the roof so these inner city kids can't afford to go to a game? So they can't open their eyes to go to the game. So if you're making $100 million a year, 20 million a year, 10 million a year, and you really believe Black Lives Matter, the people that talk like this, then why aren't you helping them with 5,000 tickets a game for all the inner city kids to go for free? Give them a voucher to buy some drinks. Give them the chance since they're 5 years old to go with their mom or dad to these games. let them see there's another thing of life outside our neighborhoods that I grew up with. I was getting stabbed up. I was getting battered. I was getting shot, just like these kids. So when they say Black Lives Matter, why doesn't those lives matter when that 33-year vet police officer was killed? He was black, wasn't he? Or why wasn't that FBI agent that was killed? He was black.
Sure.
Why doesn't their lives matter? Or that 5-year-old girl that got shot in Chicago? Or the other 1,200 people that got shot in Chicago? And I watched these spoiled, bratty white kids running all over picketing. But I don't see them go in those neighborhoods with all their money they got because they're rich white kids and go help those kids in Chicago or in South Jamaica. They just want to run around with their signs and go back to like de Blasio's daughter did and go back to the mansion. Like
they want to look cool, but they don't want to spend their money. They don't, and they think they're looking cool, and they look like I can't say that on air, but
yeah, I know.
And I talk realistic and honest about them. There's some bad, like in anything. Most are actually good or trying their best to do their job. Like anybody else, they're scared to be on the street. They don't want to get killed. They want to go home to their families. Why not have town meetings? Whoever the leaders are, advocates for any group, whether it's black, whether it's white, whether it's Arabic, or it's Spanish, whether it's Indian, and have an auditorium setting and everybody
good point.
And no yelling, talk and let's discuss, because I was in jails my whole life. I know what they understand because I've been through what they've been through. But I don't understand these big mouth ball players that don't do the right thing, or these musicians, or they're making zillions of dollars, but they won't let these kids go see these games. And then they'll
go see the concerts. Yeah, you're right.
But the owners will tell you, well, I got to charge this kind of money because I'm paying these guys these kind of salaries. So, it's like the actors and actresses. They all talk that nonsense, but they live in Beverly Hills. When everybody's rioting, they're not rioting at that house, at the governor's house, the mayor's house. Go to de Blasio's house, go to Cuomo's house, go to Newsom's house in California, go to Murphy's house in Jersey, and then tell an owner that business is closed. Sorry, you got to go out of business. Your life savings is gone because I need you to quarantine. I mean, the country's a little screwed up because no one's talking. And I'm advocating just for people. I'm not advocating right or left. I'm just advocating for people's to be reasonable so they can go buy an ice cream cone when they live in those communities. But don't hand them 300 and go, here, this is for you. People they're not educated or they don't pay attention. Malcolm X, they make the sign. Well, Malcolm X is the first person that said, don't let anybody hold you under your thumb. He didn't actually, he wanted you to have opportunity. And I'm saying the same thing. Give opportunity, give jobs. Don't give free money. Don't give welfare. Give them an opportunity to have a good job. Give them the chance to change their life so they don't stay in the street.
It works.
Did you run for congressman in New York? I'd vote for you.
Yeah.
Seriously.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to bring you on the centralist, man.
I'm actually passionate.
Politics are right on.
You got to remember, I lived on the streets. Here's something that people don't understand. I'm Albanian. I come from a family that's been suppressed. People talk about slavery, talk this. My family's been suppressed since the Ottoman days. And then we were forced in religion, out of our religion. Then we were a communist country. And then we had the Kosovo-Serbia war. So my family's been killed, slaughtered, told what to do. And it's not an excuse of why I became what I became, because my ancestors were abused. And I became what I became because I wanted to take a shortcut and I wanted to be a gangster. That's for money.
That's being totally honest there. I appreciate that.
And the same with the kids that are 5 or 6 years old in these communities. They shouldn't, or their parents shouldn't have to worry about a 5-year-old girl going outside and getting shot in the head. And where's these white, spoiled little bratty kids that are telling how they care so much? Well, go care in the neighborhoods and give some of your money and show you care. Help them get a job. Your father's probably a CEO of a company somewhere.
John, can people donate to your Second Chance program? And how would they do that if they wanted to?
My agent, David Nash, handles all that. And
tell them, get us some banners or some links and we'll put them up throughout all the sites.
Yeah,
and, maybe we can generate a little money for you.
Some of these people that are in jails, and I think when they come home, if they're doing 2 years, 10 years, or 20 years, if you let them have an opportunity, they'll make something of it. But you got to change the mindset. Not do what we're doing now. We're closing down school systems because of this is political nonsense. You know how many kids you're hurting by not having schools? You know how many suicides? You know how many depressions? You know how many doing drugs?
How many people get their asses in trouble? You're right, 100%. You know,
Yeah,
and
100%.
you're going to have frustration, and people that don't have money, businessmen, people that are first time, the fireman, he was a black guy, lost his business. What do you want him to do for a living now? His business is gone. Should he put a gun in his hand now? You're forcing,
Yeah,
that's an issue. Yeah.
with their back against the wall, feed their family, they might do something wrong. And no one's saying anything. So
I'm glad you brought that up, because I was thinking, when I was in the Navy, I was Special Forces, and our company was mixed, and there's a very small group of us, about 20 of us all together. And you had to rely on these guys to have your back. I mean, there's no doubt about it. I was actually a sniper for the group. So it's, they're very, it didn't matter what color we were, didn't matter where we came from or how we even got there. As a group, we all had each other's back, and it wouldn't have mattered what was going on. Everybody in that company would have took a bullet for the other guy. No ifs, ands, or buts. Not even in a heartbeat. So I know that we can teach these kids something that can do away with this racism and give them something else. I don't know where we're going to start. I like what you're doing.
I don't really believe there's racism.
I agree with that.
I think it's political.
Yeah,
I'd say there's some racism that's always going to exist. There's people that have hatred in their heart. But I know all my black friends and me, we don't look at each other like that. And I know, and you got to remember something. Anytime there's adversity in this country, 9/11, anything, you don't see anybody looking at each other's color. They all helped each other.
That's true.
And so I think a lot of this is aggravated politically with they want the tension and the racism because of politics. It ain't because people
control.
They talk about there's black, there's white, and there's blue. Okay, let's talk blue, the police force. You know how many African Americans there are? Yeah, how many Spanish there are? They all are human beings watching each other. No one's saying, well, he's a black cop, let him get killed. Well, he's a white cop. Or, if you go to a baseball game or a football game or a basketball game, interracial, they're hugging each other all the time. I don't think it's that much hatred like everybody thinks. I think they promote it. And I think if you have more auditorium talks with all the leaders there at once, I think you take a guy like Al Sharpton. I don't like him because he promotes violence. You want to hear something? His son goes to Poly Prep, one of the whitest, richest schools around. But yet he tells the black community something different. He hangs out, I've said this over and over, at the top of the six and smokes cigars with the whitest white politicians. So if you believe, go live in the neighborhood. Go live where everybody else lives and give 3/4 of your money to that community and help them.
Didn't you have dealings with Al Sharpton? When you were on the street, didn't you have dealings with Al Sharpton?
No, I met him. I didn't have dealings with him.
Oh, I could never meet him. I'd drop him ways to it. There's no way I could even get in
I just think he's an instigator. I've talked about, Malcolm X. I like what he had to say over the years. He promoted self-sufficiency. Martin Luther King Jr., obviously, great leader, doesn't advocate for violence. Anybody that's advocating for violence, in my opinion, is full of shit, because I was that violent guy. And that's only spewing hatred because of your own, whatever's going on with yourself. Like I had, I guess, issues myself. And you're trying to change that. And normal tendency never's going to change. It's in my heart when someone challenges me to go back and you got to teach yourself to be a different person and don't react that way. Use your mind, talk a little different. And I think the instigators of all this stuff that's going on, it's a shame because of the young kids are getting hurt and not being, they should be in school. They should be doing positive things. All these rich athletes should be putting centers together and different things for all these neighborhoods in every state and every city to get involved in organizations to help them. If you really did.
I think for like movie stars and sports figures, I think there should be a 30% tax on top of everything that goes back to the people. I mean, Jesus, these people, come on, you're going to make $160 million into a football, but we got firemen out there making $35,000 a year. I mean, what the hell? Our society is ass backwards. I get myself in more trouble when I do my political show over this kind of stuff. But
people don't like, but you look at de Blasio.
That moron.
This is depleting New York City of money. And yet he's talking nonsense. You're depleting the city of money. You're leaving it. But the guy was a Marxist. So I think that's what he wants. I don't think the public really understands what socialism means because we're from a communist country that, was a communist country at one time. It only means they're going to control you some more. And if they're the only ones you're relying on for a paycheck, everything they say and do, if you don't do it with a yes, sir, you're screwed. So the only thing that brings freedom, like in the mob, is self-sufficiency. So it's very simple. Offer jobs, offer employment, give people opportunities in all our neighborhoods, and no matter what color, to have a good job. And second chance program, back to that, is to help individuals, if you make a mistake in your life, which most people do, a chance at life again.
That's what I like about you, John. You go on, you talk about your career, your past, but you have a solution. You help people. You want to help people that were in your situation, that paid their time and now want to become part of society. And you're providing that. So I hope people think about, somehow supporting you. I want to mention your books again, too, if you don't mind, because for people that have joined us. And then let's have some fun. You want to do the Hitman lighting?
Yeah, we can do the Hitman Legacy.
Well, I got to say, I appreciate the way he speaks with that note that, you got to no matter of fact kind of speak to yourself. You really project really well. I mean, people should pay attention to you. You got the background, you got the attitude, you got the voice and the look. So you can't, I'm glad you're out there trying to help kids, because let me tell you what, man, there are a lot of effed up youngins out there right now. And all this COVID and all these moron politicians we have are just compounding it daily.
Well, Joe,
John is great.
John, before you start that segment, let me just say one thing.
Yeah.
People are attacking the police, right? Now I'm a guy who was a gangster. I've been locked up by them, beat up by them, and okay. The problem with any police force is this: our mayors and governors send them out, and now the mayors and governors are pointing at them. They're the ones that are controlling anything that's going on. They're asking the police force to go ticket you for everything. They're surcharging you. They're yelling at the police, go out and give more tickets. So the public dislikes them, but they're not the ones that are making money off these tickets. De Blasio is, or whatever mayor is, whatever governor is. They're setting these things in motion. They're raising the tolls. They're raising the bus fare. They're raising the train fare, but they're raising their own pay. I see them taking their pays.
Oh, yeah.
I see them taking double pensions. So I think the auditorium and town meetings need to address, well, how about getting rid of the tolls? How about getting lower on the bus fare? How about train fare? So every time de Blasio wants to make an excuse that he wants to put another monument up or whatever the hell he's talking about,
Yeah, whatever he's talking about.
because you're just going to charge them again. Everybody in the city is going to pay for it's going to pay through your taxes. It's going to pay through your bus fare, your tolls, and everything goes up. And they're not telling the public that. So these advocate, intelligent leaders like Bob Woodson, I don't know if you follow some of the activists. He's really a smart guy, right? And you got the BET founder and owner, who's an intelligent man. They understand this. They talk about self-sufficiency. And this is what these town meetings need to be about.
So let me, again, mention information about you, John, and maybe you want to give out additional contact information for people that joined us. We're talking to John Alite, former Gambino crime family hitman and enforcer. Is that okay? Is that a good way to say it? And John's a friend of mine, and I strongly endorse him, the credibility, and he's doing something to help young kids in society. If you want to learn more about his background, the book Gotti Rules, which you can get on Amazon, is fantastic. He also has a sports betting site where you can get premier sports pick. I mean, this is your expertise. AliteSports.com, ALITE sports.com. And I have all these posted on my Facebook page and social media. What I'm really excited about is your channel, crimeflick.com. Crime, CRIME, flick, FLICK.com. And you can watch all your favorite crime shows, podcasts, but you have a special show called the John and Gene show, right? With Gene Barello, who I like. And you really talk about the Cosa Nostra crime, and you have a really interesting, approach to it.
Michael Dowd on from the 7-5. I don't know if anybody ever watched the documentary. Michael did 14 years. He used to be an NYPD cop in 75th Precinct. And, we touch on some of the stuff we're talking about and some other things in the street world and the mob. I got a book, Prison Rules Out by Nick Christopher.
Oh,
and
yeah, I saw that.
The Darkest Hour with Susan Pike. So, yeah, and I got another book coming out now. So
let's do that lightning hitman round. Okay, let's have some fun.
All right.
I love
John,
that.
don't let me forget to make sure all his books get posted to the website.
Oh, okay. Good point. So either you say, I don't know the guy, I know him, or I took him out, and give us the details. Let's have some fun. Louis DeBono.
I was involved in the conspiracy of his murder, yes.
Really? Okay. Michael, is it Michael Vigna or Michael Levitt?
Mike Lavigny, I shot him.
My wife's maiden name was Lavinia, by the way.
I shot him in the chest in protocols, and he testified against me 25 years later.
Really? Wow.
Yeah.
Paul Gione. Is that
Paul? I shot in front of Gotti Sr.'s mother's house on the conduit. I think I hit him 4 times. He laid in snow. It was a snowstorm, about 3 feet of snow, 2.5 feet, which froze him and actually saved him to the end.
Was there some sanitation worker that came out?
Yeah. So you do know that.
I know that's.
He came out screaming. I went to finish him. I took a knife out, and I had a fishing knife, and I went to go cut his throat to finish off the hit. Sanitation guy came out, and he grabbed part of the plate, and guy Keith Pellegrino ended up giving me up, telling the police that I had his car. So that was probably one of the only ones I was investigated on. Believe it or not, back in those days, cops hardly came around, but this guy I shot's father was a first-grade detective, so they pursued it.
I should have given a warning if you're squeamish, turn the radio off for a little while, but it's late at night.
Oh, I doubt any of our audience is squeamish. I don't think we got to worry about that much.
Giorgio Grasso.
Georgie Grasso, I hit him with Detective Phil Baroni, was in the car with me, and a couple other guys. I shot Georgie Grasso 2 or 3 times in the head. He tried to hit me, and there was orders to kill him, but him and his brother-in-law tried to hit me years right before that. The year before that, I believe we left him at Shea Stadium, City Field.
You got to tell the story. You took a guy out or something, and then some guy's following you, and you turned around, and what's that story? I love it.
Yeah. A guy, Sal Noto, actually Sal Noto's brother-in-law was marrying his sister. There's a guy that grew up, nice guy, regular guy from my neighborhood. He invited us to his wedding, and it happened to be a guy I shot. He was in a club called the Bulkhead. Joe O'Kane was a guy that was around me at one time. They threatened to hurt him or kill him, and he called me up in a panic. I drove to the club, and I shot the guy in the middle of the dance floor. I walked out, and 4 guys following, two sets of guys. And I left my car where it was because they were following me. I turned around, and I just shot a guy, and I'm like, I don't understand what you're doing. I didn't really want to shoot him, but he just kept walking at me, and I shot him too in the stomach.
Now, you baseball batted 3 bikers in a bar?
What was
that about?
With Kenny Nicole, who's still around. He's alive. The bartender, Debbie. The owner's name is Buddy. That was called the Old Brother Inn, 78th Street, Jamaica Avenue. I was home sleeping again. My friend, he passed away since then. Regular guy, 3 bikers. Got into an argument with him, and they called me. I showed up. I only live a couple blocks from there. It was one of my drug spots. And that's the first guy I believe I killed. I baseball batted him he was a vegetable. So I guess
you baseball batted like over 100 people probably, right, in your career?
Yeah.
I got a question I bet you never got, okay?
I know most of the names. That's why I laugh when a guy like Michael Francis can't even understand this.
This is why I wanted to do this lightning round, to show that you're specific, you're credible, names and places. So here's the question I bet nobody ever asked you. What kind of baseball bat did you use?
Actually, I used a 32-ounce bat, and because I used it in baseball, so I know what kind of bat I used.
Any other stories? I got a whole bunch of names, but you can pick some out. But I wanted to do this not just for sensationalism, but like I've always said, John, you have a lot of credibility, and a lot of these people are alive, the witnesses, right? That seen this. So
I'll give you another example, because people ask me, what do I regret the most?
Yeah,
Joe O'Kane came to my house another time at 3 a.m. My father was screaming at him, and he's supposed to be a tough guy, this Joe O'Kane. He gets killed in jail, in a Kane prison, actually. And two Keegan brothers, Johnny and Brian Keegan, lived around the corner from me, tough Irish guys. They hated Joe O'Kane. They abused him. He wouldn't fight him. And he came running to my house, and he was with his girlfriend, Joe O'Kane. And my father says, the kid's supposed to be a tough guy. What are you coming in my house getting my son? Anyway, I went out and I baseball batted the Keegan brother. And I regretted it because they were tough guys. They were nice guys, and they happened to be right. Joe O'Kane was a weasel and really garbage guy. And again, I protected him. And my thank you was he testified against me for Gotti. So this is the treachery of the life. And I helped several times after that.
Ricky Stratton, just a couple more. Ricky Stratton.
Ricky Stratton stayed with two brothers, real tough. The brother Kevin Cullen still stays in touch with me. Used to work for me also in the drug business. His two brothers, Bruce Gotti, Ricky Stratton, they came looking to kill me, 5 of them. And I went back at them. We killed Bruce Gotti, and then I took the Cuccarelli brothers, another guy, Tommy, and we went on the Interborough Parkway in Brooklyn, and I shot him in the head on the Interborough Parkway.
Anybody else you want to add?
I mean, I could go on, like, you know.
I know.
I know why you're doing it, and guys like Michael Francis, I think, can sit with me, you, or Anthony Ruggiano, or anybody else, and they can keep giving them those lists, and I'll keep giving names, places, dates. California, there's 2 guys that stay in touch with me since I'm 19. I piped and I hit 3 bikers there also. They were trying to rob a friend of mine who was a swimmer, a college guy, nice guy, strong guy, and these guys are all alive. They can tell the stories. You know, these are everyday events for me.
So what about John? What about you, me, Michael, and Ori have a sit down and make up and be good friends? Could that ever happen?
I don't have. Listen, you know, I don't have anything particularly against Michael Francis. I never talked bad about him until today, actually. But I don't like that he keeps chirping out of his mouth, off camera and on camera. And he's made some side comments. He does what he's good at, what his father says. He doesn't learn to keep his mouth shut. And he's got a big mouth, and he talks like a child with likes. And he had this coming. So I don't have a problem sitting down and being a gentleman and shaking his hand. Yeah, but I just want to teach him every time he opens his mouth and he's talking nonsense, you're hurting a kid. You're trying to make them believe in a nonsense life that you never pulled a gun on yourself and used on anybody. So stop trying to glamorize what you don't know yourself about this mob world.
Now, did you have a lot of sit downs? Because people I know that were, you know, let's say in the mob, they said half the time was sit downs, the other half the time was weddings, funerals, and baptisms.
Yeah, listen, in prison, I heard a couple of bosses in prison, one from Chicago, Gotti's brother in McKeon prison. And again, I can give names of Teddy Persico was there. I can give names, who was Carmine Persico was his brother. He was there. One of their guys were there. There was 10 different wise guys there at the time. Mikey Spinelli, Lucchese guy, Patty Della Russo. I can go on with the names that seen it, know the stories are accurate. And for the guys that Michael and whoever else like Michael that don't understand the violence of the mob world, you were born into father or not legitimate father is not important to me. Born into a life that you're selling kids a bullshit story, and I need to check you on it. So when you're dressing down, whether it's my partner Gene on TV, was a legitimate tough guy, Gene. And he grew up in a family that's royalty. And the Ruggiano family happened to be best friends, the mother and father with Michael's mother. So when I talk, I'm accurate about what I say and what goes on and the understanding of this world.
Yeah, you know, I got to mention one more name, and I don't want to say the reason why. Frank Locascio, was he a consigliere for one of the families?
Frank Locascio was actually one of the underbosses before he became consigliere. He wanted to step down. They brought Sammy up, and he got a life sentence. Sammy's actually trying to help him now to get out from that life sentence. And I thought he was a nice guy.
Yeah, I may have known somebody in the family. That's why I was curious.
At all. And he's dying in jail, and he hated Gotti Sr. at the end of this.
Well, Professor, John, Professor John DeSalvo gives you an A++ on the Hitman Lightning Round, and I will be sending you a certificate.
Thanks, John.
That was great. I know. Man, I'm really impressed because, like I said, you don't hesitate. Boom, 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 boom.
Well,
And
people,
you can go on and on.
people challenge me on a regular basis still, but I'm not. I try. I learned to be a different guy, and when people say, well, it's you shouldn't be proud of it. It's not that I'm proud of it. I'm really and people that know me and some of these victims know I contacted them. So for the people out there, they don't know that I contacted family members. I sat with some.
That's nice.
Some talking, we discussed this, and I moved forward with my life. And the only way is to be honest about what I did, what I was about, and what I'm about today. And today it's about the kids' second chance and advocating for what we just talked about a couple minutes back.
John, this is a story I don't tell many people, but my uncle once said to me, "We're going to make you a made man." I didn't realize they meant folding bed sheets in a hotel. I told you that one the other night.
Yeah, the other night we were talking about that. Right?
The other thing I like about you is you like my jokes, and I love it. See, I don't. You know what? This interview was great for you because it shows you're a regular guy. You've gone through a world of crime. You've made your amends, and now you're trying to help others. And it's not bullshit. It's not talk. You're putting the money where your mouth is.
See, he shows he's a real man. He's not a pretend man.
Exactly.
And kids will respond better to that. When people speak with authority or they speak with experience, and you're showing, look, I've been here, I've done this. I'm trying to tell you, you don't want to go here. Kids respect that more. Than somebody who's all fancy dancy. At first, they'll see the flash and the money, but there's no real respect there. They're only looking at the flash and the money. And I've watched over the years, many kids, they'll go the other way if someone will just stand up and give them a chance to go the other way. But if you're just going to throw easy money at them and the easy lifestyle, yeah, they're going to jump on, probably get their asses killed, but they're going to jump on. But when you got somebody like John out there going to say, hey, look, let me show you, let me explain to you. I'm telling you, this is what my life was. This is where I am today. I'm showing you can do things a different way. It makes a difference in people's lives. It really does. And I really appreciate you getting out there and doing it because a lot of people would have just went on with their life and said, screw it, and just kept doing whatever, or just got out of this altogether and just let it go from their lives altogether.
Hey, Joe, I got beat up by some cops. They broke my nose, broke my arm. I mean, I've had cops, right?
Yeah,
but
I've had a couple.
And I advocate actually for the cops because the rest of them, I've experienced a lot of good cops to me. They did the right thing. Even when I was a criminal, locked me up, didn't abuse me. So when everybody's on this hate thing with all the police, I'm against it because I don't judge a man. And I'm going to go back to Martin Luther King. Don't judge a man by his skin. Don't judge him by what he's wearing, what uniform. Judge him by his character. So when a cop is a gentleman, he's a gentleman. It doesn't mean you got to hate every cop. If you had a bad experience with one, that's fine. But not all of them are bad guys. And I know because I've dealt with them and I got beat up by some. And I got beat up pretty bad by some. And I was chained to a chair in jail by a shitty warden. That was a woman. That was an abusive bastard. And I've been abused by different people, different prosecutors that threatened me. And then there were gentlemen that they did their job. They didn't have any hatred towards me, and that was it. So, everybody that's advocating out there like every cop is a bad guy. It's not true.
No, it's not.
And I want to be honest. I'm a criminal saying it, or I was a criminal. So, people need to step back and these mayors, they better remember they're head of these police forces. So stop pointing at them, point at yourself.
Yeah, that's right. I agree. I agree because my first broken nose came from a cop. First broken rib came from a cop. But you know what? I've got family and friends in the police department. My stepfather was a state trooper for 30 years. And don't get me wrong, he was an ass. I'm not going to lie to you. He was a tough old bastard. He didn't play around.
But you know what? I'm going to tell you, John, as a kid, I was real violent, right? As you get older and as you get a little mature. No different than every job, every position, in any power position. People sometimes have a tendency of abusing that position. But overall, you can't say all cops are bad. It's not true. It's the opposite. I think some of the leaders and advocates and guys like that I just talked about that was involved with Second Chance, they'll advocate the same thing for kids. The more you hold the anger and hate, the more you're going to get yourself jammed up. If you look at yourself and say, Denzel Washington has said Denzel Washington, the actor I'm talking about, he's really, if you listen to some of the things he said at colleges, he did some speeches and talks. He's an incredible, intelligent individual. He said some things about going to get what you want and becoming successful and, respecting yourself. And I think that's the major thing for all the young kids that are in the street. Respect yourself. Don't hate yourself. Don't put yourself in those positions I used to put myself in and out of cages my whole life, in solitary confinements, getting baseball batted, getting stabbed up. People are talking about, well, you got beat up. Of course you got beat up. You're on the street. You're going to get beat up. You're going to get batted. You're going to get shot. You're going to get stabbed. And you're going to possibly lose your life and in and out of jails. That's not life. So the advocating should be on a positive note from some of these leaders.
And I wanted to real quick go and touch on it. It was someone like you that kept me from going that way. I'm not going to lie to you. When I got out of the military and came home, I was just kind of, I'd lost my dad and I was just kind of scatterbrained. And I was looking, I'll be honest with you, I was looking for trouble. I 3 times I got into it in the French Quarter, beat the living shit out of a bunch of people. And then a friend of mine who used to be in the mob came along and said, Joe, and I can't use the language he used, but he was basically like, what the are you doing, man? He said, you're better than this. You do not have to do this. He said, your daddy went out of his way to make sure you did not get into the family. What are you doing? And he stayed with me for about a year and, just kind of, and it was what I needed. He was there. But if he wouldn't have been there, I'm telling you, my life would have went a much different way. Because it was an open door for me. It wasn't like I couldn't have just walked in. I grew up with a bunch of people in the family. It would have been, they'd have bitched, but they would have let me in eventually. And because I used to go with Kenny and them on collections on a regular basis, just for the ride, nothing else. He'd always try to give me $1 grand or 2 or 3 for the ride. I'm like, no, that's okay, man. I'm just hanging out with you because I liked it. He was a good friend of mine. But he made sure that I understood the difference. And see, you remind me, and it's one of the reasons I respect you, because you are standing up for people. And it's going to make a difference in people's lives. Trust me, it will. There'll be some kid out there, some young man out there thinking, wow, this dude was serious, man. He was serious. He knows. And, he's telling me don't do this. There's other ways. And some of them, don't get me wrong. There's always going to be the ones that can't help themselves. There's always going to be the ones that just the money's too much or the life is too much and they got to do it. But I'm telling you, John, you're going to help a lot of people. And I do appreciate you for getting out there and doing it.
I think it's the glamour too, right, John? People see the Mafia on TV, the specials of the Teflon Don. I want you to comment on 2 things you've said, and this really would help young people. You said there's no code of silence and really no code of honor, right, in the Cosa Nostra. Is that true?
Of course. For the kids that are out there, and I've named names over and over again, from every crime family, but every boss from every major crime family around, not just New York, other cities, other states, all cooperated, all ratted, all were informants. When the kids are believing in what exactly? People are in this life for one reason in the mob for the most part, right? For money. It's a financial gain. It's a shortcut to success. Yeah. And in that shortcut to success is the loss of life. And, when I say the loss of life, I talk about whether the friend or foe, Frankie Berg and Billy Estrema and Mikey Merlo and Angelo Costelli and Kevin Pittman and Joe O'Kane and Georgie Grasso and Ricky Stratton and Bruce Goddard. And I could keep going with those names. Sure. And they're all dead. Right. And then I could go with, a ton of more names that stayed with us, grew up with us. And the rest that aren't on that list are in prisons. And if somebody reads the small print, I'm going to tell you one thing for sure. And I was one of those kids that didn't want to listen at one time. You're going to end up in jail for a very long time. You're going to end up dead. You're going to end up suffering. Your girlfriend or wife is going to leave you when you're in prison. Don't think they're not. They're going to cheat on you when you're there. These are all the things that are going to occur from the street world. And I advocate strongly with armed forces. Everybody knows that I've been to a lot of events. My friends are in armed forces. And I believe in positive reinforcement of whatever you're going to do, whether it's go into armed forces and get a trade, go to college, get a trade, don't want to go to college, just learn a trade, just work a job. But don't take the shortcut, because the shortcut is me. It's almost 20 years of in and out of prisons, suffering, crying, getting stabbed, getting shot, getting battered, getting beat up, worrying about everywhere you're going to go. Is there another enemy from my past? That's part of all this, and everybody turns on you. And if you think that you're going to have any friends, they're only around when you're back on top again. Because when everything fell and crumbled around me, I brought up all my loyalty friends that deserted me and stole my money or tried to steal my wife or, never went to see my children. So the young kids that are out there, there is no win in this life. And guys like Anthony Ruggiano, why I keep bringing up his name is I respected him as a kid because he was older than me. I respected his family. And he's one of those guys that's been advocating. He's been working in drug rehabs and things like that. And the father's name is legendary in the mob. They just don't know it because he was a low-key gangster. And he's one of the most famous gangsters, if you're going to talk about gangsters, in an era of famous gangsters with Albert Anastasia and Murder Inc. So when guys are saying, they only know my later history later on with Gotti, they didn't know my earlier history with Luciano and Ruggiano. Yeah. And these are top of the top in the mob chain. And my respect level comes from these same guys like Ricky Stratton. And I'll give you an example. His brother, Michael, was a street tough guy in jail at 16 years old for murder. He's one of the guys that helped me get my life together. Imagine that was my enemy as my friend originally, then became like an enemy. Because of family and friends that we were warring with, and became one of the guys that helped me, and Richie Langston. And there's some real tough guys that I grew up with that weren't gangsters, like Jojo Puma and his brother Frankie Puma. These guys are from my neighborhood that were, tough guys. I mean, all of us in and out of jails our whole life, and all we did was suffer. So for those inner city kids that grew up like me, all I could tell them is try their best to lose the hatred and try to get a real job. Because you're going to think what I'm saying is wrong because I thought it when someone was trying to tell me that when I was a kid too. I could save your life maybe, or save you some misery. Hopefully some of these kids listen.
And hopefully they do too.
You work out?
All the time. Every day. I try to do about 500 push-ups a day. I used to run a lot. I had a hip replacement actually. I was filming and I told them that my hip was real bad. They didn't believe me. And that night, I guess they believed me. They didn't know it was that bad. And I ended up going to hospital that night, and I ended up getting a hip replacement. So I was doing a boxing scene, actually, and I couldn't move. Yeah, and I told them, they didn't realize the pain I was in.
Yeah, but that's no fun. Yeah, my wife broke her hip 2 years ago. Yeah, that's no.
Years ago, I got shot in the hip, too. So it's a double whammy. So.
Yeah, I imagine that didn't help matters any at all. But yeah, that's a nice little recovery there, too. It takes
yeah.
My daughter wanted me to ask you something. If I forgot to ask you, she was going to get mad. Or it was my son. No, it was my son. I'm sorry. Are you afraid that somebody could try to take you out now or do something? Because obviously you made enemies, I'm sure, along the way, right? I mean, but in your life now, do you ever have a fear that somebody could come up to you and whatever?
It's not really a fear. I mean, you got to be vigilant like I was in the life. That's part of living the life I lived, that it's always going to be there. Mm-hmm. And you know what the fear is, John? And and I've talked about this I did a show with actually my therapist. And my fear is not to put myself in a position where I have to kill somebody again. And, you got a lot of young, naive kids, and especially from the richer neighborhoods, and they're not from the street. They think they're going to fight you, 5 guys, 4 guys. They don't realize you're thinking about taking their life somehow. Or if they hurt you, you're thinking about how you're going to go back and take their life. And that's my fear, not to go backwards, because it would ruin everything I'm doing with kids. They'd say, look at him, he can't do it. But I've done it now for almost a decade. So I got a track record of doing the right thing. And
it's tough. Yeah, doing the right thing is tough.
Yeah.
Especially in today's world, it's harder than it used to be. I got to be honest about it. It's sometimes I think, ooh man, I could shortcut here, shortcut here. I'd be sitting way prettier than I am right now. But I got kids and family now, so I try to not even think about shit like that anymore.
Well, yeah.
It's a tough one, but that's, I got a 34-year-old son. Sometimes I'm like, oh man, but he listens for the most part. He's going to drive me drinking again, but gave up booze like 15 years ago. I told him another day, you're gonna keep it up and start drinking again, man. It's yeah, my doctor cracks me up. And he said, boy, you were bad when you were young. He said, you don't drink or smoke or do anything. And I said, yeah, I got boring is what I got. I said, yeah, I do radio now. He's like, what? I said, yeah. He said, you do what? He said, yeah. So what can I say, man? I've mellowed with age. But I really appreciate that out there. You know, just gotta speak English. I really do appreciate you being out there doing this. And it's just nice to know you're out there doing it, because I'm telling you, it's going to make a difference. And so even if it's just one kid, you know, it's going to make a difference. And I'm sure it's going to be more than that, but I'm sure it's already been more than that. But, you know, it matters, you know, because we try anytime we can to help where we can. It's one of the reasons we do the political shows, just so we can take on, you know, bullshit, some of the BS politics. You know what? We find ourselves today taking more media on than we do politics these days, because the media just seems to be a joke. It's like they want to stir trouble. They, you know, all this racism, like you were saying earlier. I agree with you. I don't, and I've preached this for about a decade now. I don't believe that way that, because I'm from New Orleans. I live in a black city, and racism. If racism was like CNN and NBC said, there would be shootouts down here every day, and there's not. It's just not that way. And I got a lot of friends, you know, and they don't hate like that. I don't know where the media gets it. Somebody's like, you live in the South. I said, yeah, dude, racism is dead in the South. I said, maybe it's still alive up north, but it's dead down here. I said, you got to remember, the majority of blacks live in 4 states: Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, and Georgia. And I said, we've been living like that for 100 years. And you know what? We get along pretty good. The cities get along good. Everybody seems to get along good. And when there's killings down here, it's black on black or white on white. It's not black people killing white people or white killing black people. It's usually gangbangers. You know, they even stay away from the tourists. It's just usually gangbangers over a little bit of territory or something, you know, getting their asses killed because they were stupid and young and don't know what the hell they're doing. But, you know, I'm just glad you're out there doing it, because, like I said, I'm sure it's going to save some lives.
Yeah, you know, especially, you know, John, I've been a professor all my life working with kids and trying to help them. So what you're doing is something I really appreciate, because that's the future of our country. And is this quote from you? I get my notes mixed up, but I love it. Did you say, make your own fun, enjoy life?
Yeah.
Live it to the fullest, make your own choices.
Yep.
I love that. Every sentence.
Thank
Did
you.
you just come up with that?
Yeah, I'm just, you know, being honest again. It comes from my heart. And, you know, I was talking about, you know, some of my friends going to what you said, and I think this is part of it, is people that know me. I'm always with a big guy, a black guy, John Wilson. And somebody said something about him being my bodyguard. And Joe, he's one of my best friends. Prince Badin, ex-pro fighter. Denny Brown, a trainer. These guys, we've been together for years and years. And I don't even think anybody looks at skin with us. That's why I don't like when people always, there's so many interracial marriages now. This is a completely different era from 50 years ago. And, you know, and armed forces and everybody's ball players, like I said. But, you know, kids got to be taught that, you know, it's about your character, just what King said. And it's about your heart. It's about what you want for yourself. Forget about the next person. If you want a good life, then get it. You know, don't screw it up. And, you know, I think this, and I'm not overly religious, but I believe in God and faith. And I think there's so much more than after this. And actually, I want to tell you, I believe there's a lot more after this, but I forgot to tell you this, especially on you guys' show. The Senate committee just sent an approval to send to the Pentagon to release UFO stuff.
Yes, we tracked it. One of my other shows I host actually talks about that kind of stuff. But it's there's a lot of crazy stuff going on right now. So I can't wait to see those
planets. I really believe it. I don't think
there's definitely something else going on out there. We got we're the organization that found out that we did some blood type studies and some other DNA studies just recently. Actually, over the last decade, we found some very interesting things with people who see things or experience things. They tend to have particular blood types, but and before we're not getting into that, before anybody starts, oh, by the way, I needed to tell you, there's a little group of women in the chat asking if you're married. They're like, "Ooh, he's good looking. He's good." It's like, ladies, man, come on, this is a serious show.
All the women left me. They leave me because of my past.
Love me and leave me, huh? Yeah.
Call you 1-800-555-121. Hey, John, you were going to talk about that psychic
Oh,
I
I got
oh my
a
God, I
story,
just
very
remembered
good.
that. I don't want to run out of time before you tell that
Yeah,
story.
my
It's just 15 minutes.
is the psych is my personal psychic godfather. He's
Yeah.
been friends since the '80s. We traveled a lot together. We got involved in a lot of things. He gave me, I mean, some great information. He's really good at what he does. And they did a magazine, two magazines actually. Hollywood Magazine twice did layouts on us, and Jason and his abilities as a psychic godfather, and he's really incredible. And he knows a lot of the guys that were around. He knew Gotti Senior, and he came to Florida. He talked to him a couple of times with me, and different people, Finelli's and Kim McNew, and guys that all used to come to Florida with me. And when Gotti was around, the father I'm talking about, and Jason was incredible. Some of the information he gave. So
It's interesting. Being involved in psychic research, and actually, I wrote 12 books basically on the paranormal. When you mentioned that to me when we were talking, I thought, oh my God, now you really fit into the show, science and beyond and the paranormal. And,
well, we just did a thing he did, and he at a cemetery at a Mussolini, and he's incredible, and Jason is really for real, and I've really friendly with him since the 80s.
Can you put him in touch with me?
Oh yeah, 100%.
Hey, by the way, I was walking down. I was at an expo, a psychic expo, and I was walking down, and some ladies come up to me to do tarot readings or whatever, and she said, "You want me to read your cards?" And I said, "Yeah." So I sat down. I had 2 pairs. She had a flush, and I'm out $50. I couldn't resist that, John.
John,
we got to ban you from jokes.
Making jokes.
John had to ban him. I can see it coming, man. John, if you ever want to get into some serious politics, I host a show called The Central. It's got a huge audience, and we get into hardcore politics, hardcore everything, right? But it's mainly politics and what's going on in the world. But we get into some serious stuff on the show. Actually, half the time, I got to say, when I'm by myself, I probably spend the first hour just ranting about whatever is going on currently. I've never seen our media treat someone like they treat the current guy in office, whether you voted for him or not, you didn't like him or not. I mean, seeing a president get treated like this by the media is just kind of ridiculous.
Without talking about politics, right?
Yeah.
And this is not politics. This is just facts. The economy was the best it's ever been.
Right?
Okay. International trade agreements are all for the United States.
Right.
Unemployment for minorities are the lowest it's ever been.
Exactly.
College and universities black funded with Tim Scott that initiated with Donald Trump was the most ever.
Yes.
So without getting into politics, I know those are all facts. Now,
yes.
My biggest thing politically is, if I was going to talk politics, I hate the media trying to divide the country, black, white, Spanish, green, blue, whatever. Because I think if you leave the public alone, you're going to see that no one cares about race. That's why there's so much interracial dating, so much. Just leave us alone. Stop instigating. The media loves to instigate. And so I don't particularly like watching the news anymore because
it's garbage.
Me either.
If you go to school like I did or grow up in my neighborhood, the way we did, we were all interracial dating, going to same clubs, hanging out. My friend Titi, we're friends since we're kids, all of us. So we don't look at each other like that. I don't like it. I talked to a guy, Walter Beach, who wrote a book. Jim Brown, the football player, wrote his insert. And Walter Beach was at an event with me in Brownsville when we did a talk. And you got to get his book. He's got a book that's incredible, Walter Beach. And he grew up when there was racism. He played professional football. He was in the Cleveland Browns Super Bowl team. He's an incredible individual. He's a positive individual. And he doesn't talk hate. He talks about, without sounding corny, he talks about love and inner power. And he had a good father as teaching him. And he talked about his teammates, that white, black, that supported him, not one or the other during racism. And when he really grew up racism, I don't agree what's going on. Maybe things aren't perfect today, but they're never going to be perfect. But I don't like the tension that the media tries to cause.
Yeah. I agree with you, John. I grew up in New York. I grew up in a black neighborhood. I was the only white kid eventually. We talked about it. I play drums. I know you like drums. And
I love drums.
I played with the Jose Malis band. Do you remember Jose Malis from the Jack Parr Show? I was the drummer in his band when he was making a comeback. And Clark Terry was the black flugelhorn player on the Tonight Show, was my mentor. He was my inspiration. And half the musicians I played with black. There was never race or thinking of being different, And I don't know what happened to this country.
No, I don't think it changed.
The media did.
Promoting it. I think it's the media.
Yeah,
I think they have an obligation, and so do the bosses of those channels, to stop instigating the tensions. And I think the same thing with these spoiled white kids, that if you really want to help, then help. Stop causing animosity and nonsense and run around because they go home to their mansions. And I just think they run around with signs because they think it's a cool thing to do. But if you really want to help, if you really say Black Lives Matter, I want to know why nobody went to the funeral for that 33-year-old veteran that got killed for no reason, and his son was on the air. I felt terrible for the son. And
black, blue lives don't matter.
He's a human being, right? And he's a poor guy that dedicated his life, and he lost it. So, where was everybody at his funeral? I just don't get it. And I think this is the media's fault.
It is the media's fault. It's been for a while now. I noticed, we got to go way back, but it's like I remember when the media first time, when they started trying to steal elections, when they were like with Al Gore, George Bush, and they started saying, oh, well, no way that he won Florida. I'm thinking, you got to be shitting me, right? Jeb Bush had an 86% approval rate in Florida, and you really think they were going to vote for Al Gore and not his brother George? I was like, get the hell out of here. What kind of moron would actually believe that? And then, we've seen it again in the last election. Now we've seen it. And then we see this guy, they go in illegal fines. Oh my God, I don't even get started on this. But I just haven't seen this level of corruption in years I've been on the planet.
Joe, I think with this election, the problem is the candidate isn't, and Joe Biden, forget it again. I'm not going to talk politics right or left. Yeah. There's something wrong with him mentally. He's either sick, something's wrong.
Yeah, I agree.
He's not capable of carrying a conversation. So it doesn't matter what he believes. He's not capable of running the country because he's not well mentally. He's not. These aren't typical slip-ups. The guy.
And people tell me all the time about how he does this. I said, I'll tell you what, guys, I'm not going to worry about any poll or anything. I said, when Joe Biden and Donald Trump get on that stage together, we will really see the true Joe Biden. And I said, either the country will accept it, which they probably won't. Because the guy is, I agree with what you said. When he starts talking, he's like, the other day he's screaming on the mic, and Donald Trump's let 120 million people die. I'm like, wait, what? I said, that's like a third of the country, man. What the hell's going on?
Yeah, I want a front row seat for that debate. Hey, John, before we run out of time.
I think Joe Biden's racist, by the way.
Yeah,
he eulogy for Byrd, the senator that passed away, was his good friend. Why are you doing a eulogy for a guy that was part of the KKK? So when people are talking about racism, they better look at his front.
He's definitely racist. There ain't no doubt about that. And just look at his legislation.
And I'm not even talking about politics now. I'm just talking to him as an individual. What are you doing saying a eulogy for a state senator that was in the KKK and one of the leaders? So why are you doing his eulogy? Somebody said something stupid to me. Well, he was a state senator. That doesn't make him have to be his best friend. Why was he his best friend?
John,
I want to give out
your links again and your contact information and maybe anything else you want to add before we run out of time, because I tell you, I want to thank your agent too, David Nash, who was very nice and helping to arrange this. And I can't tell you how grateful I am coming on. And like I said, I feel I made a new friend with you, John, and I really appreciate it. But again, I recommend totally the book Gotti Rules, which Amazon, right? Probably the best place.
Barnes and Noble, actually.
And Barnes and Noble, okay.
Yeah, it's George Anastasia, a great writer, crime writer.
Yes.
He has his own show. Nick Christopher in Prison Rules. Actually, it's called the handbook of what goes on if you get arrested or if you're in jail. And then there's they're all also you can get through Amazon, through some of the local bookstores. And you have Darkest Hour. That's on everywhere also with Susan.
I got that, yeah. And Alite, sports.com, right, for the sports betting
And
site.
Netflix, my show in Australia, I think it might be spelled with an Flix. I'm not sure. So if it's not,
Oh, okay. I didn't have that. Okay.
Netflix, yeah,
And I'll check that and correct that on
I'm
my.
not sure. I think it is. I don't
Is
even
there
know.
any other information you want to give out, like a
I
website
got
or?
films I'm doing with Netflix that'll be out this year, and I'm traveling to film in Russia with a friend of mine on a 6-part series from Denmark. The series is actually about him, and the 2 parts I'm engaged in the project because of some international stuff we're involved with.
Oh,
So,
and you're going to the UK in a couple of weeks, right, on tour?
yeah,
Want to talk about that? Yeah.
Well, it
We
depends
got
on
a big audience over there,
I don't know
so
what's going to go on. I did a
we
lot in the UK. I did the GQ there. I did the Radio Times there. I did the Trevor McDonald Mafias 1 and 2 there. I got a big connection in the UK. The guys that were inmates with me from Brazil are all there. So I did some podcasts there. I got friends, Patrick Jenkins. I'd like to say hello to. He's in prison. He's coming home soon. Friends to say hello to some of my friends in Vineland in Philadelphia, and down at Stone Harbor in New York. I got some good friends in New York, Peter, Timmy, Kevin, great guys. And these are all legitimate gentlemen, really. And that's the world that, by changing my life, I was blessed to be around some good people. And hopefully I can put some kids in the same direction. And we deserve to enjoy our lives. We only go around once.
I hope they do a movie on your life.
I hope so. I get a lot of attention. I just haven't got the right deal, and I keep turning them away.
Yeah.
So if I do it, I want to do it right, or I'm not going to do it at all.
yeah, be careful with them damn movies, because a friend of ours who did his experience, that if you ever watch Fire in the Sky and you talk to the guy Travis Walton,
I know
movies like oh yeah, do you? Because I do. He's a friend of ours. Yeah, well, his movie's only a third accurate.
Huh?
Yeah, Fire in the Sky is most of the movie is just BS. He'll tell you. He's honest about it. He's like, that's not what happened to me, man.
Yeah. But I got to tell you, I really believe his story.
I do.
And I sat and had dinner with him for 4 or 5 hours. And my friend John Raschuti, I did some films with him, and his partner Jill. And so they're good people. And I got involved in some projects with them. They got a documentary out on Kensington on the drug issue. So great guys and people and women, and really. But I met Travis through them, and his story was amazing.
He's a lot of fun to talk to. He when he came on my show the first time, actually the largest show on this network, he comes on. He tells me, he said, "Well, I've done this times." I said, "Dude, trust me. When I'm through with you, you're gonna be like, what the hell? No one." And every question I asked him, he had never been asked before. Then I started telling, because I've been researching for 35 years. I started telling him stuff like, "Did you wonder why it was you and not the other guys?" I said, there was a CIA agent in the woods that night." He was like, "Whoa, wait a minute." I said, "Think about this, Travis." I said, "Them son of a bitches knew you would come in a squeaky old truck, bouncing up and down lights." I said, "They probably got scanners, knew you was on top of the mountain." I said, "They were waiting for you, Travis." He's like, "Joe, just stop, man. Just stop." He's done several interviews with us over the years. He's a really good guy. He's a lot of fun to talk to. And he's very pointed in it when you talk to him. He doesn't stop. And him, see, like when you're talking that I'm listening to you speak, you're speaking the truth because you're just speaking, and you're speaking from yourself. But you can tell when people start hesitating and thinking about what they're going to say next, that some bitch is lying to you. And I've had voice stress analysis. I actually do voice stress analysis, but I've learned body language, facial recognition, all stuff from research over the years. And you'd be amazed how many people try to come on and bullshit me. I'm like, really, people, don't waste your time. I said, and I'll drop somebody. I'm like, you know what? I don't believe you. I think you're just lying. You're wasting my valuable time. Get out of here. I don't talk to you anymore. But no, you've been great. Why don't you tell your press guys, send this over, like if you're traveling, because we have a huge audience in the UK. It was one of our very first audiences. I started out with Pioneer Radio, which was based out of the UK and actually UK and Hong Kong. And we have a huge audience in China, by the way, as well. One of the few American stations that are allowed to broadcast in over 50 cities over there. So
really,
just tell them, send everything you got. I'll post it up to the science, but I'll put it on the main site as well, on the United Public Radio site. And that way, maybe we can drive some traffic, get some money, get some books sold or something, anything we can do to help out. I really like helping out people who are out there trying to make a difference. I get a lot of people request, can you post this, post that, post this? I'm like, no, not so much. But people like you, I more than like would I'm losing. I can't speak again. But just tell them, send it over. We'll get it posted up for you.
Alright,
We'd
I
love
will.
to help you out.
But John, I was going to say, I'm very impressed that not once tonight did you say, Senator, I'm sorry, I can't remember that event, but if I did, I would take the fifth.
Never. You know, I've done some interviews with some major journalists in Europe and here, and they all joke. And I have a lot of respect for Sir Trevor McDonald that I did a Mafia interview, and I got immense respect. I mean, he tells me some stories. And he was one of the first guys that interviewed Mandela, by the way, and he was the first guy when Mandela came home, and he's an incredible guy. So there's certain guys that they tell me stories as journalists that when they interview politicians, very difficult to get them to talk without trying not to answer a question, or they'll stop the interview.
Well, I got to say, John, God bless you. I send you my blessings, my support. Thank you for your friendship. You've been an inspiration to me. And if I can be of a help, and I'll be your campaign manager if you decide to run for congressman in New York. But thank you so much.
I love politics. I should have got into it. And
thank you. Have a talk with John's girlfriend.
John, thank David Nash too.
AOC out there, guys. In case y'all didn't know this, audience members, John DeSalvo, he is dating AOC. Y'all better get on him. He's turning to the enemy, man.
Dating AOC?
He said, yeah, he's a dirty old man. What can we say? Yeah, I'll have to introduce you to my friend Mike Elizabeth.
I respect AOC too, and she gives her salary up. She's taking.
Yeah, you heard that she voted to raise her salary. Yeah, she's a whack. Yeah, I try not to even listen to her. She just makes my blood pressure go up. So I just ignore her. But I know we got to get out of here. We're getting up against it. But John, you've been a fabulous guest, man. Anytime you want to come back, or if you want to come do any of those shows, just let us.
Anytime.
I have no problem giving you the press or anything else that we can help y'all out with. Like I said, we got audiences all over. And when we post stuff, we're on over 100 archive sites now. Okay. So everything stays on the site. So if we put promotional material in the site, it'll be there for life. So if you send it over, what I'll do is if you send them over like a promo slip or something like that, we'll put it in our roll ads on the other shows and let it roll out. And people can hear it. Because really, I appreciate what you're doing out there. And just besides all that, you're a great storyteller on top of it. And I hate to call them stories because, it's real life. But just in case anybody's listening, we'll call it that for the sake of argument. I really did enjoy it tonight.
John gave me the award anyway for.
Yeah. And by the way, next time we talk, I'm going to put the phone near my drums and play your drum
solo. You got to tell. And the truth is, you didn't give me the list ahead of time, so people don't even know that.
No, they don't.
Yeah.
Anyway, listen. Talk to you soon, John, and God bless you, and wish you the best.
Thank you.
Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye now.
Bye.
Ladies and gentlemen, I hope y'all enjoyed that interview. It was a fabulous interview. I know John and I got to get out of here because Quantum Leap's coming up next, and we're right up against the end of the show. If you're looking for us anywhere, you can find us on Science and Beyond or United Public Radio on any of those sites. You can always catch me on Mondays. We do this week, we're doing on The Centralist. I have Marion Delicato on. We're going to be doing activism for Native Americans, so come check out the show. It ought to be an interesting show. Of course, Wednesday we have on, well, let me tell you before I get out of here. I don't want to lie to nobody. We have on, Robert J. Sawyer will be on with me this Wednesday, so come check it out, and we'll go from there. Of course, John and I will be back next Friday, causing trouble and getting into mischief as usual. John, any parting word? And by the way, if y'all didn't enjoy this interview tonight, shame on you people, is all I can say. It was a great interview. Any parting words, John, before we get out of here tonight?
Well, just wish everyone a good evening. God bless you all, and we'll see you next week.
And good night, everybody.
Speed dial, checking if you're out, I'm out. We wild, living it without a doubt. You, me, go pound for pound, we going all night. If you're down, I'm down. Meanwhile,